It's a nice touch.
It's not annoying. Amazing.
I want it at my desk. It blew up and then I had to go back to Weimar.
Well, I'm so classy. At lunch, I had to go and put socks on because that was still not cutting it. She did not wear socks today, which I know better. If my feet get cold, I'm chilled to the bone. So now I have socks and my heater going.
You should have told me I had buddy.
Thanks for the reminder. I moved him. IT was here. Our monitors don't work.
Neither monitor?
Neither monitor.
Then I don't need to sit up here.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, anyway, don't trip over that.
I'll sit way over here. Sit down.
Well, he's good to go there, and at least the folks online can see.
Yeah.
Oh.
So there's that. It'll just be you guys, and I can see what he's doing. Did you bring your iPad, Pam? Okay. Because you won't be able to see the staff report. You'll have to follow along maybe in your binder.
Oh, yeah, but they're not going to be up there?
Monitors died.
Broken.
I'll share with Pam.
Oh, I'm ready.
Yeah.
We are recording.
Okay.
It is 1:30 on Monday, January 25th, and time for the Board of County Commissioners hearing in the matter of Knife River. This is an application to modify a approved development agreement. The agreement was 19-076, associated with case number RZ 2018-0028. Today's case number is CA 2020-002.
0230.
Today we will be considering the following findings of fact, conclusions of law and order, and an amended development agreement. I am Commissioner Carrie Smith, and I will be the chairman for today's hearing. This hearing is being conducted using WebEx. Everyone participating virtually has been muted and will be unmuted when it is time for them to speak. Staff report and any additional exhibits have been posted on the county website on the Land Use Hearings page. You may wish to open those documents if you haven't done so already. Physically present in the room today is Commissioner White and Commissioner Van Beek. Monica Reeves is our recording deputy. We have Director Nielsen from the Development Services Office and Zach Wesley from the Prosecuting Attorney's Office as our legal representation. I also have Jim Troll, and he is the applicant's representative and testifying in favor. And then online, I have Arlene Devlin.
I don't see audience.
Yeah, Arlene, we do not have audio associated with you, so if you can try and turn that on. And then I also, well, that's it. And then I have Dan Lister, who is the planner for Development Services Office, and will be presenting today's case. I just need to know, Arlene, when you're available, if you are testifying in favor or against or neutral. So,
Does it show here that Dan's muted?
yeah, Dan, you are muted, and we're going to call on you in just a second.
Sorry, Pam. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
I just wanted.
Okay, so Arlene, if you can send a chat message to Monica, she'll be able to observe those and see if you're in favor or neutral or against. We'll just carry forward and turn it over to Dan for, what do you need to do for, so we'll swear who we have in at this time.
Tricia Nielsen, Dan Lister, Jim Troll. I guess we'll circle back to Arlene.
Yep.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? So help you God?
I do.
Here's Arlene. She does.
Okay. Oh, we've got you, Arlene.
Thank you. I haven't had any volume, so.
No. Can you confirm if you're in favor, neutral, or in opposition to the request?
I'm in favor.
In favor. Would you like to testify today?
No.
Okay, and your name is Arlene Devlin, correct? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Arlene. We'll put you back on mute. So everyone will be muted. You're welcome. And we will turn this over to Dan for his staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. Dan Lister from Canyon County Development Services. As stated on the record, this is a request by Knife River to modify their approved development agreement that was in association with the previous rezone. The location, as you can see on the slide, is parcel R30866. However, the rezone incorporated the two parcels you saw on the screen. The request before you today is to modify condition number 3, not necessarily the language, but the conceptual plan associated with it. And we'll go into those details. Let me give you some history, and then we'll move. I'm going to basically summarize the staff report and give you some background, and then move forward. As stated, which I believe the monitors are not working, right? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, darn it, you're missing my slide. It's a really good slide, I promise. Anyways. Oh, good. Yeah, so this was originally approved for from an ag zone to an M1 zone in 2018. Well, in 2018, they submitted this application. Roderick Lewis was the original applicant. They submitted that, and then during the Board of County Commissioners hearing, they, due to concerns by the City of Caldwell, City of Nampa, and some nearby developers, the applicant agreed to a development agreement that incorporated the City of Nampa's landscaping and performance measures, restricted mineral extraction and batch plant uses, and proposed a landscape berm on the subject parcel. For those who can see the screen, staff identified shows the site plan, and then shows the areas where a grass area was proposed amongst the conceptual plan. So there's at the front along Ustick and Midland, there's a green area at the front of at the entrance, and then the rest of the berms are not supposed to have green grass or anything. It's just at the front. On the screens, I apologize. In 2019, the applicant or the rezone was approved with the development agreement. Development agreement came with, as stated, landscaping measures that match City of Nampa's performance measures that met City of Nampa's, but also this landscape berm subject to a conceptual plan. As part of that condition, they had to get a licensed architect or licensed landscape architect to develop the landscaping plan, submit it to DSD for approval and review, and then install it. On the screen, if you can see it, here's the original conceptual plan. It kind of shows the green areas at the front of the area of the entrance. And then staff put a blue line where that green grass stopped, and it turned into more of a rock mulch type of use or material. And here's another screenshot, if you can see it, with boulders at the front, kind of a decorative look at the front of the access areas of the property. The landscaping plan was approved by the Development Services Department. The date on the landscaping plan is August 14th, 2019. The plan was brought before the board, not necessarily for review, but for the addition of fencing on the berm. It was reviewed and found to be consistent or substantially compliant with the conceptual plan. In the landscaping plan, the front areas where it's supposed to have grass, they proposed turf-like fiscus grass, which is your typical lawn type of grass. And then they provided also along the berms outside of the green area was supposed to be rock mulching. So it's like smaller rocks. They didn't state a color necessarily. It just looked more like a kind of a gray type on the landscaping plans based on their conceptual design as shown on the screen. So that is what planning staff approved, and that's what was supposed to be installed. Around February, March, staff alerted the applicant that based on the review, it was not consistent with the landscaping plan. So if you look at your exhibits 10, you'll see a lot of exchange between staff and Knife River, just kind of stating that based on review of the landscaping plan and what they're actually doing in their revised landscaping plan, that it was not consistent with what was approved. Staff did also in September of last year did a site visit, which also demonstrated that it was not in compliance with the approved landscaping plan that was approved by DSD. So on November 16th, a courtesy notice of violation was sent out to the applicant stating that it was not in compliance with condition number 3. So in response to that, the applicant submitted a development agreement modification to modify the conceptual plan to match the revised landscaping plan. So if you could look at on your screen, the biggest change to the landscaping is obviously the green areas. So it had a substantial green area at the front of the property where access to the property was proposed. If you look at the screen, what it went from, and let me, for people who can see this, I'll go back. So staff delineated with red lines how far the green area was supposed to go at the entrances. So it's a pretty significant area at the both entrance areas of the property off of Ustick and Midland. And then the revision is only a thin area at the front now for ornamental grasses. So like bunny grass, things that the applicant felt was a better investment and easier to maintain. And so that is one of the changes proposed in the revised landscaping plan that was provided to you on in Exhibit 3 and the visual rendering in Exhibit 4. So you see this little dots in front of the entrance areas, and that would be the new grass area, basically. But it's not, again, not grass, but bunny grass. The other change would be the type of rock. It's no longer a rock mulch, but more of what the applicant is proposing as more like cobble rocks. So bigger rocks where they cover more area, and they feel that it'll be less change to it, meaning less disruption. If somebody was to walk on it, it wouldn't open big gaps or anything like that, so it's easier to maintain. Those are the two major changes to the landscaping plan. Though this is a significant change to the landscaping plan that was approved, as we know, it's not in compliance with the conceptual plan that was approved as part of the rezone application. However, staff does recommend that the board approve this application, and the reasoning behind that is it doesn't change the review of the rezone application in the sense of why this was proposed. The requested modification is still consistent in the sense that, first of all, this was supposed to be the conditions of the development agreement were to first of all, ensure consistency with the City of Nampa's requirements, since this area is identified as an industrial growth area by their economic development department and planning department, as well as in their earlier letters of that rezone, they anticipated this would be a property that would be annexed into their city limits within 2 to 5 years. If you look at our current maps, and I'll go back to that, whoever can see this slide, if you can look at our site maps, the areas in pink around the property are now the jurisdiction of City of Nampa. That's what the indication is. So they can currently annex into the city as forecasted, basically. Secondly, going back to my slide here, the requirement of a landscape berm and restrictions, those conditions were originally proposed to minimize concerns by the City of Caldwell and nearby subdivision developers are concerned about the noise, the light pollution, things like that from an industrial use. The berm was supposed to kind of reduce that and give it a pleasant look that would be consistent with the type of landscaping Caldwell would require if it were in their city. And so that is what was initially proposed. Of course, during that rezone deliberation, we did increase the type of landscaping we wanted to see as part of this, which that's where the conceptual plan came through, and then the requirements of a landscape architect to really show us what it's really going to look like. Again, the applicant hasn't changed necessarily the need for that berm or landscaping. They ultimately changed the landscaping plan in the conceptual plan. So approval today will grant them to amend the development agreement to add the conceptual plan that they have proposed. That's all that the change they're asking. The denial of this, if the board decides to deny this, what the applicant has two choices at that point. One, to either comply with the landscaping plan that was approved on August 4th, 2019, or annex into the city where the development agreement will become null and void. And that is the two decisions they have if denied. And that concludes staff's presentations if you have any questions.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Van Beek.
That's not a question, but a comment, because Commissioner White and I were here for that lengthy testimony that was provided. And my recollection of this is that the Sphinx Butler report, which was identified early in Dan Lister's staff report, was provided as a voluntary mechanism, an inducement, to persuade the board to approve this. And in the absence of that, which they did not have to provide, it was testimony in opposition by the city of Caldwell, the board may not have approved that. And our attorney is here that spoke. I had at-length conversations with him, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, but what he said was because the applicant's attorney, Sphinx Butler provided that information, it set a standard of proving up and meeting that they would, because it was a voluntary document, they would have to meet the standards that they set for themselves. So, I guess just a statement for the record, I have aspects of this that I really struggle with.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I want to Dan, I want to just clarify, the only thing that they're going to do different is cobble rock instead of the wood chips, mulch or whatever. That the bunny grass. Or is that the fescue right there that does the border right now? Is that the bunny grass, or is that big tall grass that grows and then it goes to seed and then it's in everybody's lawn and all over the gravel?
Through the chair, you're correct. The only major changes are the grass areas being reduced and adding to an ornamental kind of grass area, the bunny grass.
Okay.
And then also instead of the rock mulch, they're putting cobble rocks, so larger rocks instead of the little rocks that you would normally see with rock mulching.
Right. Is rock mulch bark and smaller rocks, or is it all stirred up? I'm not familiar with rock mulch. I guess we can wait until we can pass that applicant on this. So.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
And for the record, again, I'm going to disagree with what's been presented because this is a major change from the Sphinx Butler report. I had our facilities director look at that. He said that presentation of grass in the front, which is on the west side, on Midland, and the north side on USIC, represented a 3-to-1 slope. I had the City of Caldwell engineer look at that. He said, yes, that's a 3-to-1 slope. That grass was not a fescue grass. It was not an ornamental grass. It was a manicured grass with a slope that could be mowed by a mower. That's what was presented. And the pictures that were in color showed colored 3/8-inch chips, and it was pea gravel that was out front. That is very, very different from what's being presented today. And so I understand they took the liberty of changing that, but when we look at this presentation, there's a necessity. That's the language that's used. Provide a statement demonstrating the requested modification is a necessity.
Well, I need,
Go ahead, Commissioner White.
if you're going to go by the, I'm not going to have an argument, but I'm just stating my questions to that. If we're going to go with what Spink Butler presented, then why did he have to, or they have to, why did we put it in there that a landscape architect had to present a plan? That's another excess charge. And Spink Butler added those, I believe that was an example of what you could do or something like that. But if we're going to stand on those pictures that were presented by the attorney representing the transaction or the sale or whatever, however that went, then the part to require a landscape architect's expense, then I don't know what that was. That was too much.
Can staff confirm if, regardless of the photos from the beginning, was the grass required per the landscape plan from NAMPA? Like the mowable grass?
Through the chair, NAMPA didn't really have any comments on the grass area. It was more of their heavy industrial landscaping requirements. They just wanted them to meet minimum requirements for landscaping for an industrial park or use that they would typically have. We did, if you saw your letter in Exhibit 9, they reviewed it and they had no additional requirements as part of their review of the landscaping plan. So it meets their minimum requirements. To just go a little further, I'm just going to throw out some history here. When we did review this with Heath Clark and representing the applicant at the time, we did have different variations of the development agreement, and one of them was a more detailed requirement. I believe Commissioner Van Beek added a number of trees, a certain amount mature, a certain type of rock, things of that matter, and it was brought back, I believe, this is where it gets a little hazy. I believe we brought it back through an executive session, and that's where I think it was some review happened, and then at the next hearing, it was decided that a landscape architect, it would best be done by a landscape architect, instead of number of trees, a certain type of rock, things like that. It would just be something that they have to be, in substantial compliance with that conceptual plan, and it would be up to the landscape architect to show that and demonstrate that. It wouldn't have to be exact, but it has to be very darn close. And that landscaping plan that was submitted in August 14, 2019, that was approved by the DSD, was that plan that was close, and that was approved. Since then, as you can see by this staff's report, it has changed. So, again, the landscaping plan that was approved in 2019 is the one that was approved, and that's the one we're kind of basing, staff is basing the violation on, as well as the conceptual plan, because that landscaping plan matched the, or was in substantial compliance with that conceptual plan.
Madam Chair.
1 second. So you can confirm that there was a code enforcement violation, that it did not meet the NAMPA landscaping plan?
No, there was no violation based on NAMPA's landscaping plan. It was a violation in September based on it not matching the current installation, not matching the conceptual plan and the current approved landscaping plan.
But the condition of approval was to meet the NAMPA landscaping plan.
That was one. That was one of the conditions. And that was
the other.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other condition is what? Or because that's the only condition we're changing?
No, there's no language being changed by this decision today. The applicant is wishing to remove the conceptual plan that was approved initially, and then install the new conceptual plan that they have provided, which matches the revised landscaping plan that they wished for, that they wish to revise the previously approved plan with the new plan, basically. So the conceptual plan matches what the revisions, the wanted revisions, basically.
And then can you tell us, you can say no if it's private, but can you tell us who filed the complaint for the code enforcement?
I believe it was in-house. It was just concerns brought up by the board as well as staff about the difference between the approved landscaping plan and what was actually out there.
And then did Caldwell, did they issue any letters or concerns about it not complying?
We have not received any letters from Caldwell since the rezone approval.
Nor the Brighton Home subdivision across the street?
Correct.
Madam Chair. And they were noticed on the change? Because
Correct.
Here's my concern. Dan, what you said in your testimony was that the landscaping for this revised plan is something that the city of Caldwell would require. So I don't know if they were renoticed on what the revision would look like. There's that. And then,
well, let him answer. So confirm, city of Caldwell was notified.
Let me check and make sure.
And that would also be true for Brighton Homes if they were notified.
Probably owners within 20 feet, and then with the JEPA, Caldwell should have been notified.
Not in Caldwell's impact area. Oh.
It's only in Nampa's impact area.
Okay.
Let me go through the legal notices here. Just make sure.
I have a couple more questions, Madam Chair.
Let's just let him answer it, though.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Only Nampa was notified because the JEPA is with Nampa, not Caldwell.
Okay.
And Dan, I have, Madam Chair, a question for you. It is true that there was opposition filed on the part of the city of Caldwell because of this rezone. Is that right?
I'm sorry, I lost some of that. Say that one more time, please.
The city of Caldwell was in opposition to this rezoning. Is that correct?
Correct. They had concerns about this being so close to their residential commercial areas in their city impact area.
Okay. And then I have some concerns as a commissioner that because of the amount of time dedicated to this project and that it was a contested project, and I felt there should have been greater communication between the two cities, and I didn't want the board in the middle, but I felt like there should have been some mitigation that happened there to ensure satisfaction on both sides. I do not remember seeing this revised plan that was approved by staff, and so that is problematic for me. I remember hearing that there was a requirement for a vinyl fence, but if there's a substantially different plan, it was no secret that this plan, I believe, would have been of interest to the board and approved at that time. The other stipulation that's supposed to be in there is that it should have complied with the agreement before a certificate of occupancy. So that's two things. Number one, why wasn't the board notified that there was a substantial change? And number two, why was the certificate of occupancy issued when the conditions weren't met?
Through the chair, I'll just answer what I can. One of the things is the landscaping plan was not supposed to come back to the board. It was something to be approved by the Development Services Department. So the Director of Development Services reviewed it, and it was something that we approved. So it didn't have to come back to the board. There was no stipulation in the conditions that were signed by the board at the time that required that. The only time we brought it back is because there was concerns about the fencing, and we just wanted to make sure that the board felt that was in substantial compliance. The rest of it did not have to come back to the board for approval.
And Madam Chair, to that I object because of the nature that it was contested and there was a lot of time. The other thing I would say, even with the revised plan, that plan makes it look like that it's a lower slope than it is, and that 6-inch rock, I don't know how steep it is, and I think it's a 15-foot height, but it looks different than a conceptual plan. There's no flowers out front. I had someone comment this weekend, I thought it would look better than that. This is a corridor into one of the busiest economic centers in Canyon County, and so I appreciate the efforts and the initiative that they took. It's just, I don't generally operate on the premise that it's easier to apologize than ask permission. And if we're looking at fact-finding kind of things on the necessity for change, we have subjective information from an applicant that did not go through, in spite of the notifications from our Development Services Department, didn't go through the proper channels to obtain the necessary approvals before they went ahead with the just the implementation of their plan. And I will say that I, in no way as a commissioner, believe that, and I don't think they're even close, that a heavy industrial landscaping plan would be consistent with the plan that was initially submitted. I don't think they're anywhere close.
I do partly agree that being across from a residential subdivision, I think that was anticipated. But can you confirm, Dan, was Caldwell notified for the original hearing? And if so, why was the notice requirements different from then to now?
They were not initially noticed. They were made aware of the application by the developers, if I remember correctly. So they weren't notified because it was outside of their impact area, but they were made notified by, I think, the developers, and then they started calling staff and questioning the request.
You've shown renderings of the site. Do you have actual photos of the site versus a rendering?
I have photos of the site from the site visit that was done in September, just for consistency of reviewing the consistency of the landscaping plan, and that is Exhibit 11.
Madam Chair, while we're looking at that, Dan, can you field the question why a certificate of occupancy was issued without meeting the standards set out?
Sorry, I say it one more time. I hear a lot of paper shuffling while you're talking. I couldn't hear you.
I'm asking why a certificate of occupancy was issued if the conditions hadn't been met.
That was the weird thing about this. So the one thing is that batch plant does not require a building permit because it's a temporary structure that is reviewed by DEQ. So I believe there was some negligence there in the sense that a lot of these require building permits before it getting done, and in this case there was no building permits required, so there was some conditions that weren't met until later.
Do you have any additional questions for staff before public testimony?
Not at this time, but Dan, would you give me a reference again on the
11.
And I'm having trouble finding. I've got 10F and 11A. But
it's a very big staff report. So there may be an 11A in the original staff report that staff provided just for history. So it's a huge packet. You may need to go back to the back of the packet to find the real Exhibit 11.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you for that staff report, Dan. At this time, we will call on Jim Troll. We will have 10 minutes of non-repetitive testimony. And we do need you to state your name and address for the record. We're here, so we can keep distancing.
Nothing first.
Yeah.
My name is, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
My name is Jim Troll. Address is 5450 West Gallon Road, Boise, Idaho. I represent Mike River for this hearing. I would like to state I respect greatly the time and effort that Commissioner Van Beek has gone to make sure that standards are kept in the city. Had some discussions on the phone on why we made the changes that we did. The people that the party that we purchased the property from did have conceptual drawings, and we initially based our landscape drawings on those. There was a note on there, I'll address the rock first. It called for 3/8 aggregate chip, which it was supposed to be a rock. A lot of times you'll see sometimes round rock, sometimes 1 inch, 2 inch, sometimes it's pea gravel, sometimes it's crushed. When we had internal discussions about the maintenance of these berms, it was brought up that the chips would not stay put. When you climb up and down, they are steep. They are 3 to 1, steeper in some spots. The rock would roll down the hill as you walked up. And I can personally tell you from experience, because I did a lot of the weeding and maintaining this past summer, that the cobble does stay in place much better. It locks together better. Maybe it gives a little more industrial feel, but I still feel that it meets the criteria of a mulch or a ground cover, a rock cover that we presented initially. I think the conceptual drawings may have colored it a different color, but I think it was more just to show that it was different than other surfaces on the property. To the grass has always been called out as a large, tall, seeded tall turf type fescue or approved other. So our understanding from the very beginning that a tall turf type is the kind of grass that does not get mowed. It's often planted alongside freeways on the off ramps, and it's left to grow. It gets mowed maybe once a year. I was opposed to using that type of grass because it oftentimes is very hard to maintain to keep the weeds out. Because you don't mow it, weeds can grow up in it, go to seed, and then weeds can grow in that. And the type of weed killer that you would use to kill the weeds will kill the grass as well. So we wanted to get away from using that type of grass. It was never our intention. When I look at the conceptual drawings, I can see that it's grass, but it was never our intention to be a mowed, manicured turf. Although the pictures may look like that, I think if you look real close, you can see that it's not, that there's, some taller grass type, in there. There is approximately 1,900 yards of that cobble rock in those areas at a price of about $35 a yard to install it. We did not decide not to use, that's to screen it, to haul it, pick it up, place it, put it on the berm. That's where that cost comes from per yard. But we did not delete it because we thought it was a cost-saving measure, but because we just didn't think it was going to look as well. We thought it would be better to put ornamental grass down along the bottom in a strip. There's 2 rows of bunny grass and then a Carl Forster type grass that's about 3 or 4 foot tall on the back of that. We felt like that would present better over a long period of time. The tall turf, the seeded type grass is not very expensive to install. It is, basically seed. The ornamental grasses were as I recall, about a $6,000 cost change for us to add to the plan. Going back to Commissioner Van Beek, I'd had some discussion with her because she felt like we had kind of misled her, and I just would like to speak to that just briefly. I went through about 5 or 6 iterations of the drawings when we were first working on this, and when we came back to you guys and said, hey, we'd like to put a fence and change the layout of the berms a little bit and put a fence in, all my drawings have the same date on them. Now, Dan references a certain date because that's probably when I sent them to him, but when I look up on my computer and I pull up the drawing, I have 3 or 4 drawings that are all dated 7/22 without any revisions on them that have the grass on the ends, and then the grass has been planted. I honestly, when I printed out this thing and got ready to go, I thought you guys had already seen the revisions on the grass. So this drawing will show you that, and then one that's dated 8/13 that came to me in a file, but that when you print out the plans, they have the same date. Anyway, nonetheless, I realize this is different, but I don't feel like it is a complete, it doesn't make the landscape undesirable at this point. Also, things that Commissioner Van Beek I don't think has given you guys credit for was that the original conceptual drawings showed all deciduous trees. In other words, they were just, every tree had leaves on it. We requested to put evergreen trees on the inside so that during the wintertime, when trees drop their leaves, we would still have some screening. The plan called, we had to meet the city of Nampa's standards for size, which was a 2-inch caliper tree, deciduous, and a 6-foot evergreen. If you go out there and look, the trees are all deciduous. The deciduous are 3 inches, 2.5 to 3 inches. The large majority of them. The evergreens are all anywhere from 8 to 14 feet tall. They are quite a bit bigger than what was planned. We spent extra money to have something that looked nicer, that would give us a screening quicker, sooner along in the life cycle of the plants. It hurts my feelings to hear that you've had people that come through and say that it doesn't look very nice, that they thought it would look better, because I've heard quite the opposite from people that are in my business anyway. They think it looks rather nice. I know it's probably the nicest looking concrete plant in the state, and it's probably the top 10 in the United States. I realize that's not why we're here. It's because it doesn't meet exactly the criteria of our drawing, but our changes were all made to make the landscape easier to maintain and look nicer over the long term. So they weren't necessarily made so that we could cut corners or cut costs, but more so to provide a better looking product at the end of the day. Now, I would agree with you. It does look a little barren at this point. The shrubs have not grown to their full size. You know, a lot of them are kind of hard to see, but we have red twig dogwood. We have a few other things that will grow to be, 14, 15 feet across that will fill those spaces up. I don't remember there ever being any flowers in the drawings or conceptual drawings. And we felt like we never tried to skirt around any rules. We didn't have to file for a building permit, so we didn't come before you. We submitted to the city of Nampa. I submitted this plan, the plan that shows the ornamental grass. I honestly thought that that's what you guys had seen, because when I look on it, it has the fence on it as well as the other things. Our landscape architect has reviewed and does meet their,
Does that conclude your testimony? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Drake. And I do want to disclose that I had a conversation with Mr. Troll, who was very professional, he was very courteous, he was very pleasant to talk to, and he did provide information. The last communication that was sent from him to the board, I did not respond because I realized at that time that this was going to come back before the board, and I should have disclosed that conversation, but so I'll do that now. But December 10th of 2020, and I want to put on record, Mr. Troll and Knife River have an excellent reputation. I did appreciate his comments during the conversation that we had. It was just very different, especially where our staff had noticed them, that there was something different. But I am hearing now that our staff made some decisions that were outside of the knowledge of this board on approving and issuing certificates of occupancy for that. Mr.
I want to correct that because they did not issue certificates of occupancy for this. So I don't want that to be on the record because they did not issue those. They were not required.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so maybe you can come back to that because it says in the staff report that that was to be noted before there was a certificate. So when I asked Mr. Troll at that time, when they had been operating, and perhaps I just don't have the right terminology, Madam Chair, but they had been operating since June of 2020, is that correct?
That it was probably pretty close about that time.
So Canyon County does not currently have a business permit, occupancy permit that is issued. And so if you have a condition of approval that requires a certificate of occupancy, that would be for all other things, not a batch plant. So if Knife River built an office there, that would require a building permit with a certificate of occupancy, where staff would have an opportunity to go through those conditions of approval. But if it was just the batch plant, which is all that's out there, is my understanding, that would not require any type of occupancy permit or business permit.
I appreciate the clarification. I'm looking at attachment A, page 3, item 4 on exhibit. It's the staff report that's for this hearing. So it says prior to the issuance of any certificate of occupancy on any structure. So perhaps there are where I've gotten confused.
Yeah.
There's no structure been built, so that was not required at that time. Thank you for the clarification on that.
Yep.
Mr. Troll, Dan, can you go back to, because I want to know what I'm looking at. The latest rendering, so there's the rendering. Okay, stop there. We'll just compare the two. But this modified plan here, what is that with yellow tops that looks like flowers? What am I seeing that I'm not seeing?
That is the grass that has
The
the
stuff
yellow.
with the yellow is Carl Forster ornamental grass.
Okay.
It kind of has like a wheat top.
Okay. Thank you for the
It's
clarification
not
on that.
it's not a really like a feathery type top. It's more of a green top.
Yeah, but it's plaza. It's pretty.
It is pretty. I confused that for some type of a flowering shrub. So thank you for the clarification on that.
Do you have any additional questions?
Not at this time.
Okay. So I also don't have any questions. And so with that, we don't have anyone else signed up to speak. So that would conclude public testimony. If you
Madam
so
Chair,
chose.
I make a motion to close public comment.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to close public testimony. And any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes to close public testimony. So at this time, I will open it up for deliberation.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
The only two differences I come back to again is there are 1,900 yards of cobble rock, approximately at $35 a yard to install. And I guess I do have a question for you. Can I? Okay. Did you?
Oh, I don't know, because we closed testimony, we can't.
I can't ask
So
the applicant. I missed it.
we can reopen testimony.
Okay. I'll make a motion, we reopen it for my question.
Second.
There's a motion by Commissioner White, second by Commissioner Van Beek to reopen public testimony. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. The testimony is back open.
And I apologize, I hope this doesn't appear that I'm unprepared, but I just overlooked the question. Did you put weed mat?
We did not put weed mat down, and the reason we didn't was because for the same reason we chose cobble, is we felt like the rock would not stay put on top of that weed mat.
Thank you, and that brings me back to my point where the mulch and all of that, when it rains, it's all over the roadways. It's a mess. It's everywhere. And what do you do then? You get out there, you sweep it, pick it. And not only that, it's really prone to bug infestation and all of that. And I say that knowing because we've done that, and to remove all of that stuff and everything else. So the cobble rock, in this commissioner's opinion, is an upgrade to that type of ground cover landscaping there. And the evergreens, thank you. There is something, then there is something living, it looks like, year round. So thank you very much. And I'm going to just, probably, I'm not assuming you're going to do this or telling you have to, but it would be beautiful on that area with Christmas lights on it. So anyway, and those 3 caliper trees, that's larger than what I remember specifics on that too. So it is different, and it does appear different as far as if you have it in your mind how it should look and how it does look, but it does, the changes here are, I can see nothing that would be detrimental to anything across the street or that the business in and of itself. And let's not forget, it is an M1. It is contiguous with City of Nampa. And I would say, just from the ones that I've seen and been by and different things, it probably is the nicest looking one in the state of Idaho. So this commissioner, I have no problem with the changes that were made.
Mr. Van Beek?
I just wanted to say for the record also, Mr. Troll had put on there that there was not a requirement or that the trees weren't mature, and that's listed in there. That is a correct understanding that I had, that the mature landscaping was not required. So I have this revised conceptual plan, which is what you've submitted. So can you tell this board if, when this is built out, will it look like that with what you have on there?
I think so.
Okay, because this looks like a more dense population, again, of a different variety of trees, but
The trees that are in that drawing, I sent to the landscape architect so that they would get the right trees drawn in so that the rendering would be good.
and you don't think that the industrial standard for that lessens the population of trees on the berms?
No, there's still the same amount. You did mention you thought there was about 60 trees planted. I went through the last 4 iterations of the plant plan.
Okay.
And the tree count was the same and the plant count was the same. So the density has not changed. Some of the tree types are different than what they call out here. Like I said, we did some evergreens as opposed to as opposed to conceptual, but we did not change it to look industrial per se. Those were just the trees we felt gave us the most color and the best coverage for the area.
Thank you for your testimony.
Okay, I would entertain a new motion to close public testimony.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner White, Commissioner Van Beek. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes to close the public testimony portion of this. I'll open it back up for board deliberations.
I kind of gave mine, but there's one thing Madam Chair, I'm sorry.
You're good.
No, I'm very sorry. That's rude. I need to be recognized. So, the tree types in the city of Nampa and different things like that, they're pretty particular about different things like that. So, because of, they don't get along, some of the trees, they found that root systems went down in and ruined sidewalks and pavement all over town on different things. So, again, Nampa did not address this or anything like that, but I'm confident that your landscape architect is fully aware of the trees and the height and the root systems on that. So thank you for the changes that were made in the long-term investment in those changes.
Commissioner Van Beek.
Thank you, and I appreciate Mr. Troll being here today and what he's put on record. He also indicated to me that their commitment is a long-term commitment. And that there were some drip irrigation systems in place or something in place to make sure that what was there was watered. Those trees have to be replaced if they die. I'm experiencing, in my own way, some disappointment, and maybe it's more with our own internal processes or I'll say it differently, of being blindsided by the way that the new conceptual plan works. And had I had the opportunity to look at that and been prepared, I may have felt differently about that. I do know, in talking with Mr. Troll, that prior to my conversation with him, I had a farmer call me whose ground had basically been taken because of that roundabout there, and they had crops in there. And because I'm in agriculture, I listened, and that subject of conversation came up with Mr. Troll, and in good faith, he went back and compensated the farmer for the crop that was in the field. So that demonstrates good faith. I appreciate Mr. Troll wading through the process of getting a proper approval for what I know he's proud of. And when I say Knife River, people do say Jim's a good guy and Knife River is a good operator. And in honesty, that property, I pass through there on a regular basis, and I wondered what the truck traffic, it's been going, and it appears to be flowing well. I don't know what that truck count is through there, but that roundabout appears to be functioning well. And so I am interested in your comments, Madam Chair. I may have a couple of additional statements. I appreciate, again, Mr. Cole being here today and the information that he's provided.
Thank you for those comments. For mine, I think it's important to note that City of Caldwell did not respond to this request. Neighbors were notified, and in many situations, you don't know what's really happening, and the neighbors do drive by this and see what is there, and that none of them came to oppose and ask for additional requirements. Says a lot that they're okay with it. And so for me, I'm okay with this amendment, and I can support Knife River on moving forward with the existing. I think it's important to have a project that can be maintained for the long term, because I've seen a lot of these projects, and including Nampa, where landscaping has been installed and then it dies. And so I think this is a good plan that will work for the community. And since we did not get any testimony that it's not great, I'm very supportive of it.
Sure. I have a question. It's a hypothetical question. So in the staff report, Dan laid out options for Knife River in the event that the board was not supportive of that. And so because when we heard this the first time, there was no pathway to annexation. Now there is a pathway to annexation. And so it's a question, what happens if and when this annexes into the city of Nampa? Does it nullify the parameters that the board puts around there for heavy industrial and those?
Correct. the development agreement will not be applicable any longer if it's annexed.
And I would just say for the record, like I did at that time, that I would hope that there would be a greater spirit of cooperation between those two entities. The testimony from Jerome Mapp, who's the director for the city of Caldwell, said that to have heavy industrial next to residential like it is a bad plan. And so that is my position, that greater conversation, because the dividing line is right down Middleton Road, needs to take place, not because I want it a certain way. I'm looking to the interests of both parties long-term for the people that have to live next to an industrial area, and that needs mitigation.
Thank you. Okay. With that, I would entertain a motion.
I will make a motion that we grant the request to modify an approved development agreement. And this case number is 2020-0002. And is that the one we're modifying, Tricia, RZ 2018-0028? Or 19076. It's got 2 or 3 numbers
We
on it.
want to just,
So that's
the new case number DA 2020.
the DA agreement, so it's 19-076. So that's the one we are going to grant the modification to.
And I have a question on that. The staff recommendation is DA 2020-0002. So
Yeah, we're approving case number DA 2020-002
Yes.
to modify a prior approved development agreement.
second.
Okay, so I just clarified, Pam, Leslie seconded. Clarification, does that include approval of the staff findings of fact and conclusions of law?
Yes.
Yes? Perfect. Okay, so there is a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion before we decide on this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Lister.
I had my hand up. I'm sorry. I tried to get your attention. So we will have to bring back a amended development agreement. We don't have it before you because the development agreement affects the adjacent parcel. So we need to write that up. I was talking to Zach about this. We need to write up that development agreement and make sure that owner signs it as well. It doesn't affect any conditions particular to him. It's just, or them. It's just the conceptual plan that would be modified, which is not, doesn't affect their property, but they still need to sign the development agreement. So we would bring that back before the board at an agenda, through a board agenda, not a hearing.
Sounds good. Do we sign the findings that same day?
You can sign the findings now, I believe. Actually, I'll leave Zach. I'll let Zach answer that one if he's still there.
So I think that our motion then is fine, because the motion was to approve the development agreement of the case with the findings of fact and conclusions of law, and then we'll be signing the development agreement at a future date. And maybe,
Correct.
Dan, did you already send me the findings?
I thought I did, but if not, I'll send it to you right this second.
I have them in here, except for it says Tom.
Tom Dale, yeah.
You just gotta fix that.
Okay, I'll fix it real quick.
Thank you, Dan.
No problem.
Okay. It is 2:32, and this case is closed.